A massive thank you for giving us your time today. We are going to talk about building and scaling accessible, inclusive digital experiences. For anyone who doesn't know Wunderman Thompson, just to give you the one-liner, we are part agency, we're part technology company, and we're part consultancy all wrapped into one. And that means that we approach a problem from every single direction for our clients, which always gets the better outcomes. We're going to spend some time talking about accessibility today. And the key thing I want you to take away is accessibility isn't just about accessibility. Accessibility is about how you can tell and create better, more immersive stories and richer experiences. So with me today, we have Patrick, who's going to tell us all about his experiences and his journey. Patrick has also, I'll drop it in now, just launched his first book, which is Human 2.0, available in all good bookstores now. And then the wonderful Rachel is going to talk to you about how to create accessible experiences and the tools and techniques that you need to think about on that journey as well. I am not just the beauty on the stage today. I am also going to talk to you about scaling. And I'm going to talk to you about scaling accessibility. And we have a wonderful AI tool called Brand Guardian that we can leverage in multiple different ways. We're going to talk about how you scale it up in this world where there's a plethora of content out there.
Before I get going, everyone, I'd like to do a quick show of hands as a poll. Who here has used an accessibility device this morning? So nobody's used a smartphone. This is what I want to talk about today, how when accessibility is done right, it's integrated in a way that you simply don't notice it. But before I get going, I was always taught that if there's an elephant in the room, you should introduce it. Yes, I am disabled, and I'll tell you a little bit about my backstory, but it's not the most important thing about me. What's much more important is how tech is shaping my daily life and, most importantly, why that's relevant to all of you. So, my story starts back in 1997. Most people, when they're introducing themselves, don't go back to when they were born. But I was born with the usual set of biological limbs, and then in January of 1998, something changed. I became seriously unwell with sepsis and spent the best part of about 3 months in hospital. I was extremely fortunate to survive, but did so at the cost of my right leg below the knee, all the fingers on my left hand, and the second and third digits on my right hand. Now, I always think it's useful sort of scene setting and context setting, but I think what's much more interesting for all of us here today is how that has gone on to shape my life. Not in terms of my decisions, but rather how it's shaped how I've seen the world around me. I learned to walk on a prosthetic leg when I was about 15 months old, so that piece of tech has always been normal. Technology changed my life again, though, when I was 13. In 2010, I became the youngest person in the world to be fitted with a revolutionary bionic arm. And what was so exciting for me about this, and why it's starting to get more relevant to you, is that this didn't just change how I interacted with the world. Okay, I could now cut up my own food and tie my shoelaces independently, but it also shaped how the world interacted with me. I was seen differently, and the looks that I got in public on the street went from being ones of pity or sympathy to ones of curiosity and people's sort of natural inquisition going, I need to know what this thing is. So that's how we're able to change how we see the world around us through the physical world. But I think the digital world is a much more exciting one because the potentials are really endless, but only if you think about it from the correct perspective. Anyone who's spent time in the metaverse knows that you spend half your time walking upstairs. It's insane because we can literally design anything, and yet we still think in sort of the world around us. And I'd really like us today to start to think with that perspective shift and see going, what could we do when we can do anything? So, my life changed with the digital world around me. And I know that Rach and Dave are going to talk more in detail about some exciting work that we're doing. But I'd like to also underline the opportunity that I think is in front of all of us here today. We're talking about an audience of over 1 billion people. We're talking about the world's largest marginalized group. We're talking also about the world's fastest growing marginalized group. It also is a group that has a combined spending power of $13 trillion when you include the value of the people who are buying for them. This is a massive opportunity. And what I think makes it even more exciting is that this is a unique group in that anybody can join it at any point in their lifetime. This isn't something that you kind of get designated on the day you're born. In fact, 83% of disabilities are acquired after birth. So when I talk about this gigantic group with lots of money, with a massive unmet need, I think everyone here should be going, God, how can I do this? But for too long, accessibility has been seen as an extra step rather than a missed one. And I think that is the perspective shift that we need to do. When websites, were starting to become commonplace, security was thought, how can this be at the forefront of our attention? That is the same lever that we need to view accessibility through, and we're creating now, because there's such a massive potential here. So now I'd like to hand over to Rach to tell you a little bit more about some of the exciting stuff that we're doing.
Thank you. So hi everyone, my name's Rachel Smith. I'm Experience Director for Wunderman Thompson Commerce and Technology. So my key focus is working with clients, our internal teams and partners on how we can produce better customer and employee experiences that engage and convert. For everyone who's visually impaired or watching this back through a screen reader, I'm just going to describe myself. So I'm pretty tall, I'm 5'9", I've got long red hair, I'm covered in freckles. I'm wearing a blue dress today and white trainers, so I hope that gives a visual description of myself. I'm passionate about experience design, I'm passionate about accessibility, and I'm here to talk to you about both today, and how you can make distinct brand experiences that are also accessible to your customers. So let's start first with the benefits of experience design. Accessibility makes experiences better for everyone. So when you think about, is the screen readable, whether you're reading it through your eyes or a device, is it easy to navigate? Can you find what you're looking for? Can you check out? Can you pay? That's good for all your audiences, not just those with disability. For example, a new parent holding a baby, if you're out in the bright sunlight, colour, contrast, and legibility can all really help. So we really believe that using accessible design principles can make experiences better for everyone. Patrick mentioned how you can reach a wider audience with a combined spending power of over $13 trillion, and that's in addition to just improving accessibility to a wider audience. So that's a very significant number. And on to compliance. So for those of you that don't know, the European Accessibility Act is changing, and by June 2025, companies must ensure that all digital products and services meet WCAG, which is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, AA standards, or risk big fines. And that can lead to being forced to update your site faster than you'd like. So if there's one thing you take home from this talk today, it's to really understand where your business operates, the compliance rules for those particular sites, and review how your site is performing against those standards. And the WCAG AA standards covers most markets, so that's a really good place to start. Unfortunately, what we're still seeing is that a lot of experiences are falling short when it comes to customers with disabilities. From this report, Return on Disability, Design Delight from Disability, we can see that almost 3/4 of people with disabilities are saying that their customer experience is failing. So not that they're struggling, not that it's not quite as good as they'd like it to be, but that it's actually a failure. So it's really important that we turn the dial in making experiences accessible for all. And the way that we look at this is through a number of different ways. Firstly, we make it visible. We think about legibility, colour contrast, and some of those visual things that help a customer interact with your experience. We make it understandable, so we think about the reading age, we think about the different level of understanding that people who are neurodiverse have, and then we make sure that our content is comprehensible and understandable for all. So for example, the use of catchphrases or colloquialisms, such as things like, it's a piece of cake, being simple, that's quite confusing for some audiences, and some areas of neurodiversity, and also for those where English is their second language. So it's important to think about these kind of things when you're creating your tone of voice and campaign messaging. It's really important that we make it clear, and this is about how we structure the user experience. Is it clear what the next best action is? Is the service transparent? Ensure that you're not trying to trick anyone. Is the content an accurate representation of that product? So all of these things, again, are important in building an accessible and inclusive, not exclusive, experience. Of course, for customers that may have visual impairments or may not be able to look at something because they're doing other things, it's important that we make it audible. So here we're talking about alt tags, semantic HTML, so that a table is called a table in code, and all those things alongside natural language copy that add up to experience that sounds as good as it looks. And we also need to make sure that that experience is distinct for your brand. So I'm sure you're wondering how Contentful factors into all of this. Contentful empowers accessibility. Design is not part of Contentful, that's a front-end framework, but Contentful's authoring tools are accessible. They're partially compliant in WCAG AA standards and they're working on being fully compliant. They have functional compatibility, screen readers, magnifiers, and keyboard navigation, all work in Contentful, so anybody can work in Contentful. And there's also assistive technologies like the HTML, ARIA tags, CSS, and JavaScript, which are all compatible. Contentful thinks about structured content and the order that Google or screen readers see the page in. That's really important, as it might read out of order from what you expect, and the customer could get very confused. So you need to ensure you include testing screen readers when you're setting your testing plan. So don't just think about accessibility as a visual challenge, it's also a tech and a development challenge, and Contentful can support you from day one. So how do you create accessible design? So first of all, you start with the accessibility touch points. It's really important that you look across the entire project lifecycle, right from research and analysis through solution design, so the wireframes, the design system, through to build, code reviews, testing, and then right through to measure and optimize. So ensuring that you've got that automation and scanning going throughout your life cycle, and then you feed all of those defects back into your product backlog. And here we're showing a customer experience map, because all the things I've talked about so far in terms of including accessibility within that project flow and also the kind of design aspects are useful for any brand. However, it's really important that you get to know your customers. So all this kind of research that goes into these experience maps that looks at what your customers want, need, their behaviors, their frictions that they're and barriers that they're seeing within their journey. That's really important that you know that from your customer's viewpoint. And so this is where we put a lot of research that goes into the maps, and you can use usability, heuristics, so an expert looking through your site. You can look at, obviously, data and analysis, quant and qual. So that's ultimately what we would do first before looking at the UX and UI. And now I've got a few examples just to take you through some of the work that we've done to bring this to life visually. So here for the Body Shop, we again started with research, one of the research maps. And from that, we found out a lot of information that went into the UX and UI briefs. One of the key things was that people wanted to see people like them. So think people that represented their own skin types and their body shapes. And then from a perspective of the ethical and sustainability values of the Body Shop, they were really keen on that, but didn't want to be sent off to another part of the site and interrupt their shopping journey. So this is where snackable content came in. So you can see that this, all the content, the rich, diverse imagery really gives over this overall rich experience, and that shows how powerful content can be. The next slide, we've included Beauty Bay. Oh, I should have said that all of these are AA compliant. And we've included Beauty Bay because there's a kind of a misnomer that accessibility is such a constraint and you can't necessarily do exactly what you'd like. And ultimately, yes, you have to get the shade color, the color contrast right. But this just shows that you can have a very vibrant and energizing look and feel that is accessible and really lives up to the brand's vision. On the next slide, we've got Stana Stair Lifts, if you know them. And ultimately, this is obviously for an older audience predominantly. So we really embraced this. We looked to create a big, bold look and feel with larger typefaces, larger tappable areas, creating this distinct and unashamedly kind of bigger, bolder look and feel for the Stana brand itself. We took this through on the next slide to their tone of voice. So again, really important, not just to think about the visual imagery, not just to think about kind of size of text, but also how people read. So this is looking at the width of the columns and the number of words that go in one sentence or one line. And a number of other things that we did there, looking at the older audience specifically. So now just to take you through a couple of before and afters, just to show how some very small tactical changes can make a massive difference for accessibility. So on the left here, you see copy over the image. And this is done all over the place, and I'm sure you'll spot it now more that I've mentioned it. And it can be that the designer that created your page was very skilled in the image that they were using beneath the copy and the call to action buttons. But when it gets in the hands of traders, it can end up looking something like this, which is actually very difficult to read and fails accessibility. So we changed the template on the right, very simple, but ultimately with the copy over a block color and really improving that kind of type hierarchy, which improved not only the brand look and feel, but also conversion. And on to the next. This is for Mont Blanc. Again, another common kind of pitfall is using that transparent background for the mobile header. It looks beautiful, but it's not as accessible. So moving it to that white mobile header on the right-hand side guarantees that everyone can access your mobile navigation, which is obviously crucial. And that led to a Google Lighthouse accessibility score of 98%, which is fantastic. Carrying on with Mont Blanc, we just wanted to show how things can be accessible, but also have that luxurious feel. So there doesn't need to be that tension between the two. And on the right-hand side, it's just to bring out that this isn't just a visual design challenge, but it's also very important from a UX perspective. So this is just guiding customers through quite a complex product selection here of a pen and the different types of nibs. And then I just wanted to mention, as we talked about scaling in our opening, how important setting things up correctly from the start are. So ultimately, if you're reviewing your site and you have to go back and change it all, and especially if you've got multiple market sites and you need to do this before June 2025, you've got quite a big task ahead of you. If you start right at the top from a brand level and you try and guideline these principles in, looking at how accessible your site is, really start with tone of voice, brand guidelines, and design system. And if you've got accessibility guidelines baked into your design system and tested, then obviously all the components that your designers, that your agencies, who are rolling out additional features, enhancements, and markets, that means that you won't have to keep scanning and doing the audits as often, because ultimately what it's built from is accessible. Thank you.
A round of applause. I was just going to dive into Brand Garden a little bit more and talk about scaling accessibility as well. So I'll give you a bit of backstory on where the product came from. So we have an amazing content AI team based out of Poland. And for the last couple of years, they've been looking at ways they can leverage AI for content, for website build, and for rollouts as well for our clients to deliver efficiencies and also increase performance as well. And when they've been on that journey, they identified a need that clients were having, and that came down to two things. One, there was a proliferation, if I can get the word out, of channels going on, and also there was a significant increase in sophistication of personalization. And what this was meaning was that the client teams were starting to end up with hundreds of thousands of assets that they not only needed to create, but they also needed to manage those, and they needed to monitor them as well in terms of when usage rights were expiring, where they were no longer relevant as well. So a big use case, a big task to deal with. And this is where we came up with Brand Guardian, which is an AI-driven tool that delivers quality assurance at scale. Just to show you a little bit how it works. So it plugs into your content hub over here. So your DAM, your workflows, your creative tools, your partners' creative tools as well. And also actually increasingly we're being asked and doing a lot of work actually monitoring live websites and social channels as well and looking at how everything's performing. At the heart of Brand Guardian is the rules engine, and this covers various use cases. So I'll come back to inclusion in a minute. But brand governance, it's monitoring logo positions, it's monitoring the palettes of the colors and making sure that all these assets coming through are correct and are on point and don't have any issues with them. From a creative excellence point of view, we're helping global creative leadership teams within organizations identify again where certain standards that they have are not being delivered by their working teams on the ground. Compliance. In Finland, you are not allowed to smile in a health advert, apparently. It's one of those things. But this is the issue, right? There's big risks around cost and fines. There's big risk around PR if you get things wrong. So Brand Guardian can also deal with compliance issues and monitor those if there's a certain need required there. And then back to inclusion, we are monitoring diversity and inclusion. We are looking, based upon a company's objectives, around the ethnicities, around the groups who are being represented, and making sure those are on point. But in terms of accessibility, and most of our clients take the accessibility part of Brand Guardian, we are monitoring text size, text length, contrast as well. So Rachel mentioned it a little bit earlier on, but from a contrast point of view, text should, I think the ratio is 4.5 to 1 in terms of text versus the background that it's on, as well as looking at all the standards, AA, AAA as well, and being able to monitor those. And then there's a number of outputs that come out of Brand Guardian, but I can sort of group these into two sets really. So one is that live, there are flags going up, going, right, there's a potentially an issue with this asset, you need to check it. And then on the other side, we are diving in and looking at a company's entire content pool and giving them assessments on inclusion or other challenges that they've put in front of us. But what we're seeing is, on average, there are teams who are servicing assets and checking these assets and making sure they're right and making sure they're representative. And we're seeing on average, a 50% drop in that effort required. So it's really delivering a lot of value and allowing people who, let's be honest, no one likes checking hundreds of thousands of assets, but be redeployed to go and do other things in the organisation as well. I've got a little video show, a little sizzle reel, but it gives you a little bit more of a better view on Brand Guardian and what it does.
Representation matters. And as a brand, it's vital your work speaks to everyone. But how do you ensure your content is both representative and accessible when it runs into hundreds of thousands of individual assets? Brand Guardian is an AI platform that plugs into your existing technology stack to give marketing, creative and production teams clear insights on their content. It works using artificial intelligence to review assets, including images, text and video, against an agreed set of rules and guidelines. For example, can all of your audiences access your experiences? Brand Guardian automatically checks your written content to ensure correct contrast, size and spacing to assist audiences with visual impairments. And how diverse and inclusive are your visual assets? Do they represent the audiences they're speaking to? Not only can Brand Guardian give insights into the demographic makeup of a single visual, it can also aggregate this data to show how your content performs overall. For example, what proportion of your images depict people of minority ethnic backgrounds? Are your images biased more towards one particular gender or demographic? Are people with disabilities represented in your content at all? Used in this way, Brand Guardian can help shape your brand's content and assets towards a more inclusive and equitable future, at speed and at scale, helping you to address any problematic areas and make more informed decisions. We have an opportunity to communicate in a way that makes everyone feel included and valued. Harness the power of Brand Guardian today and start your journey towards greater, more powerful connections with your entire audience.
Just to show you some of the work we're doing for clients. So Lego, for example, we're monitoring all of their logos across all of their assets. That includes not only the main brand logo that everyone's familiar with, but also includes some of their sub-brands as well, like Lego Friends, which I step on at about 7:15 every morning, and it bloody hurts. On the inclusion side, we look after all the internal comms for Microsoft, so we're monitoring those and seeing where there's challenges, whether it represents their D&I objectives. Does anyone work in automotive marketing? Or has worked in automotive marketing? No, maybe. So if you have, and I have, it's a bloody nightmare. So Pendragon are the second largest dealer group in the UK and growing significantly at the moment. When it comes to compliance on automotive, it's really bloody hard because you've got not only the brand, so you've got the make, you've got the model, you've got the grade, you've got the optional extras, and then you've got all these different drivetrains going on now as well. It's a bloody nightmare in terms of how much is going on. And we're helping Pendragon with that. So on every single channel, you need to put your terms on there about what specs show and what the emissions are, etc. But they're all different per channel as well. So for Pendragon, we're monitoring all of that and managing all that, which is quite a complex task, but it's saving them a huge amount of effort and time. And then Bose as well, we're doing some monitoring creative excellence there as well. So we're pretty much there, but I was just going to tell you a little bit about why the hell we're sort of talking about Brand Guardian as well, because we got together with Contentful in end of April, and we were sort of talking about what next, where do we go, what do we do? We went, well, we've got Brand Guardian, could we plug it into Contentful? And 5 weeks later, thanks to the wonders of APIs, we have managed to plug Brand Guardian into Contentful, and it's now available on the Contentful marketplace store right now, so you can get it and you can access it. So that's pretty much us done. I'd encourage you, scan the QR code, find out a little bit more about Brand Guardian. It's maybe not quite as exciting as ordering a pint from a pub on a QR code, but it's pretty good. So thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate it.